story on breakfast and abused while in public office.
I've had my tyres slashed, I've had death threats with images sent about what people would like to do to me.
People posting doctored photographs of your children and pictures of your house and things like that.
Intimidating, it was frightening for my family. I needed some time away from the limelight to just recover, really.
Yeah, Sussex politicians, from MPs to councillors, have been telling us about the horrendous abuse they've received in the line of their work, from death threats to online aggression, even physical assaults.
Some people have said to me, oh, well, you stick your head above the parapet, you're in public life, you kind of expect this. Yes, I'm very prepared to stand up in public, I'm very prepared for people to challenge me, absolutely. But what I don't think is right is when you get particular individuals who target you relentlessly over and over again.
Well, about half of the MPs who responded to our questionnaire said that they'd had a death threat. Half of the MPs has had a death threat. It's incredible, isn't it? 3 county councillors and city councillors said that they had been on the receiving end of actual violence, physical violence. And why does it matter? Well, it's very unpleasant for a start, but also it led to a very serious incident, of course, in the past.
Just before 1 o'clock today, Joe Cox, MP for Batley and Spenborough, was attacked in Market Street, Bristol. I am now very sad to have to report that she has died as a result of her injuries.
We'll talk to one of our MPs who still receives abuse in just a moment, but our political reporter Ben Weiss has been looking at these figures. What have we found then, Ben?
We asked, as you heard, the MPs and also all the county and city councillors in Sussex about the kinds of abuse they'd received. 68 got back to us, and it's politicians of every party, both men and women, although it does appear you're more likely to receive abuse if you're a woman. And we found that of the councillors, so we found for the MPs first of all, 7 MPs have had a death threat, but 5 councillors have also received a death threat. So they're voluntary positions mostly, they're not the high profile of a parliamentarian, but still death threats there at county and city council level. 3 told us they'd been physically assaulted, 8 were threatened with some other form of violence, 8 said they'd received hateful messages about things like their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, 9 said the abuse had caused them upset. Perhaps most worryingly, Neil, 8 told us they considered quitting over the abuse they'd received.
When we say death threat and abuse, what are we talking about specifically, Ben?
Well, let's start with abuse. I mean, councillors across the county told us various anecdotes, all anonymously, of course, and you can understand why they don't want to sort of put their names to this. Things like a shove at a public meeting, or lurid sexualised comments about female politicians online, vandalism of a car during an election campaign, for example. Now, as for the death threat, I mean, it's always difficult to know how seriously to take one, but perhaps after Joe Cox, most feel you can't take it too seriously, really. And Katie Bourne is Sussex's Police and Crime Commissioner. As a female politician herself, you probably now won't be surprised to learn that she's had a death threat, and she told me what goes through your mind.
I'm contacted a lot by members of the public, and sometimes you get occasions where particular individuals become slightly fixated on you. So, I've had one particular individual who sent in death threats. Your first thought is that there's probably mental health issues there. But then you start thinking to yourself, actually, are they able to carry this through? Your mind says to you, no, unlikely, highly unlikely, but based on what evidence?
And of course, this must affect your life outside of politics as well, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So 3 councillors told us their family members had also been targeted for abuse on account of their political careers, and there are the changes you have to make to your life as well. So councillors told us they'd been less active on social media, they'd changed the way they worked, some, installing security systems at their homes at their own expense, I have to point out. And of course, Neil, it affects whether you still want a life in politics, as Katie Bourne pointed out.
My concern with women in public life is, how do we keep young women involved in politics? How do we keep them safe?
Has it ever made you reconsider being a politician?
There was an occasion, yeah, where you do question it. Is this what do I need this? But I feel quite strongly about this, that if you don't talk out and you don't speak out, you're never going to make others aware.
Well, Lewis MP Maria Caulfield's been listening to all that. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning.
In the past we've talked about you've had tyres slashed, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've had a number of things like death threats, tyre slash, my office graffitied. And it really does go in peaks and troughs because it depends what issues are happening at the time. And sometimes when it's a particularly emotive issue, the abuse seems a lot worse.
It's interesting actually that someone crosses the line between the online abuse, which must be very straightforward to do, to actually doing something physical like slashing tyres. I mean, that's pretty scary, isn't it? I mean, one is very unpleasant, but the other is actually making some physical act.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, people obviously who do this are, very angry and, decide to take action. But it does then play on your mind. If they're prepared to do that, then what else are they prepared to do? And so, it can be very frightening, not just for myself, but for my family, but also for my staff, because, they are often at the front line of receiving the abuse. And so it's a very worrying time for them as well.
Take us through what it's like to read a death threat.
I mean, to be honest, when I first got elected, we used to get them quite frequently, and as Katie said in your report, you often dismiss them and think that's just someone who's angry about a situation. And it wasn't really till Joe Cox really was killed and murdered that actually you started to think, well, actually maybe there are people who are serious about this. They're not just sending you an email or a letter or abuse over the phone. And so that's when you got a threat, you started to take it more seriously. And also parliamentary services and the police, really stepped up. Unfortunately now that means that I've got a video entry system in my office instead of having an open door where people could just pop in and out. And so security has been stepped up, and you do change your life now.
Is it in the back of your mind, Maria? Do you think about it? Really?
Always. I no longer put anything personal on my Twitter or Facebook. I can't put photos of family members up because I'm very conscious that, they could then be targeted. So it does change your life completely.
Thank you very much indeed for sharing that. Maria Caulfield then, Lewis MP. And I don't know whether, maybe you're a politician, maybe you're not a politician, but you may have had abuse because of the line of your work. And if so, we'd like you to join in on this as well. What's it like to be on the receiving end of abuse just because of what you do?